Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Wisdom from the Business World, a webinar series where business professionals share their knowledge and advice. Today, I'm joined by the president of Junior Achievement Arizona, a respected professor and nonprofit leader, Ms. Katherine Cecala. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Kathleen.
And I know that Junior Achievement is an amazing organization with such an impactful mission to help young people. And I remember that when I was in elementary school myself, I really enjoyed the entrepreneurship and career lessons that I learned from Junior Achievement. So I would love to learn more about your job as the president of JA Arizona.
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty passionate about the work that we do at Junior Achievement. We are all about inspiring and preparing kids to succeed in work and life. We want to inspire them, help them see what they can be, dream, and then give them the skills and the tools that they need so that they can achieve those dreams. So in Arizona, Junior Achievement of Arizona, we served this last school year about 150,000 primarily low-income kids, and giving them the tools. And they're in generally kindergarten through 12th grade. We do serve some younger adults. And we have 7,000 volunteers in Arizona who go into the classroom and help teach the kids and tell their stories and help the kids see what they can be. And with Junior Achievement, our programs are proven to make a significant difference in the lives of these kids. They are much less likely to ever become hungry or homeless. So we are prevention. They also make more money and are more successful in their careers. We have a ton of data about graduation rates, but we know that these programs really make a difference in the lives of these kids.
Awesome. That sounds super interesting. I know many young students really appreciate the work you and other Junior Achievement volunteers do. And now I know you are the epitome of someone who helps the community through volunteer work, and you're a leader of such a wide range of different nonprofits, spanning many different fields. So can you tell us a little bit about what type of nonprofits you are involved in and your role in each one?
Well, I have been on about 45 nonprofit boards. And so I have volunteered for a lot of different kinds of organizations, even beyond board service. Currently, I'm on 6 boards. But my volunteer work with the boards that I'm on right now, 2 of them deal with healthcare. And I'm treasurer of one and I chair another one. I also am on the board of the Arizona Women's Leadership Forum. So it's about leadership development for women and young girls. I'm on a founding board member of a charter school in Arizona that serves 97% free and reduced lunch kids, so kids who are living in poverty. And we actually have the highest academic results for any school that is over 90% free and reduced lunch. So it's a school that goes into really underserved communities and gets great results with those kids. So that's a school. Charter 100, which is another leadership group, another medical clinic. Those are ones that I'm currently involved with on the board. Oh, I'm treasurer of 4 of them. So I'm treasurer and chair. I have been very involved with the Arizona Humane Society, been on their board for a long time, and I still serve on several of their committees. I have done a lot. I'm on the state of Arizona's, state treasurer's financial literacy task force. I work with a lot of leadership groups like Valley Leadership, Scottsdale Leadership, those kinds of organizations. Been a founding board member of the Children's Museum of Phoenix, worked with the blind and visually impaired and developmentally disabled. So I am, and I've done a lot of work with HIV prevention, working with people living with AIDS. So those are some of the areas. I really try to go where I'm needed, where I think I can make a difference, because there's just so many great causes out there, and I'm just really driven to try to make things better.
Wow, that is super, super impressive. You are truly an inspiration to everyone. And I know you've impacted so many different people through your work. And I know many of our viewers are also passionate about a cause and helping the community and may consider a career in nonprofits. So what does a typical day working at a nonprofit look like?
Well, I think I get excited when I wake up in the morning. I mean, I know what you really want to know about is like, what is the day to day, what I do? But I think overwhelmingly it is that the work is meaningful. And so every day I get warm fuzzies. I feel like I'm making a difference. You know that the work you're doing is making a difference. The people you work with also tend to be people who are mission oriented, driven to try to do better. So you end up working with really good people who are putting the mission ahead of themselves. And so it's working with wonderful people trying to do good things. So that's what it is. In my day-to-day work, I'd say about half of my days are, I'm the president. And so a lot of what I do, the CEO, a lot of what I do is meetings. I'm meeting with board members. I'm meeting with partners in the community. I'm meeting with donors. I'm meeting with employees, finding out what they're doing. So about half of my work is really meetings. I do a lot of writing, doing emails, contacting people. Sometimes I have to write a grant because no money, no mission. You've got to find the money. So that's part of it. But what is really interesting is that the days are varied. There's so much variety. Most nonprofits are pretty small, so people end up doing a wide variety of work.
Awesome. I definitely agree with you. The most important thing in a job is definitely having a passion for it. And I think working like at a nonprofit definitely amplifies it because you are working for a mission that you truly care about. And like you said, I know that creating a nonprofit is definitely tough. You need to submit lots of files, or you need to like call with an attorney. Can you briefly talk about the process of establishing a nonprofit?
Yes. Obviously getting the 501c3 is part of it, and the file with the IRS, and that's actually been in the last 10 years has been made a lot easier. And that's one reason there's such a proliferation of nonprofits, because it's not that hard to get the 501c3. I think more importantly than that is understanding what is it that you're trying to achieve. And I would step back and ask, why do you need to form your own nonprofit? Understand that, because a lot of people have a passion around something that they want to do, and they think, oh, I'll form a nonprofit, which is great. But what's the sustainability of that? Have you thought through the business plan? So many nonprofits fail because someone had a passion, usually a programmatic passion, and oftentimes they don't have the business skills. They don't understand the finances. They think this is really good, and if I do this good work, the money will come. It doesn't. You've got to be able to publicize yourself. You have to be able to find the funding, and you have to come, and that's difficult to do. So I think before anybody starts a nonprofit, step back. What are you trying to achieve? Is that the best way? Or is there another nonprofit that maybe you could work with that could do it, that could maybe do it as a program within what they are doing? If you're wanting to form your own nonprofit, one, it's easy to Google some things and find out what you need to do, but you do have to file with the state. You do have to file with the IRS to get your 501c3. If you want to start before you have your 501c3, sometimes you can get someone to be your fiscal sponsor during that time so that you could be qualified as a nonprofit. You need to put together your board of directors. You need to develop your bylaws and your articles of incorporation. So there's a lot of steps that you need to go through. Yes, working with an attorney helps. I also happen to be an attorney, so I've helped some other nonprofits get started. But those are some of the steps, but it's really thinking through that business plan before you get too far ahead.
I definitely agree with you. I think having or establishing a clear mission and goals is what's most important, because if you get too caught up in like the legal work and like actually in like the technical stuff, and then halfway through that, you're like, oh, wait, the mission, it doesn't work out. And then it'll be a waste of time. So definitely agree
Yes.
with you there. And now, just from hearing the process of establishing one, I definitely know that running a nonprofit is also not an easy task. So what do you think is the biggest challenge nonprofits face, and how can they overcome and address them?
I think for most nonprofits, the biggest challenge is funding, because trying to find, they generally have a great mission and things that they want to do. Yes, they could find ways sometimes to be more efficient. However, it's about the money. How do you get the resources? You can't hire the staff you need without having the resources to pay people. Most nonprofits start with an individual who has a passion, who works for free. And that person works for free for a while. And then at some point they're like, well, how do I eat? So then they want to pay themselves, or they need to hire people. So how do they get the money to do that? And even nonprofits who have been in business for 50 years, 100 years, every year it's figuring out how are we going to fund our work. And there are so many different funding models, and depending upon the type of nonprofit, where they're getting their money from, varies. There are some nonprofits who are entirely fee for service, and so everything they're selling is paying for it. There's some that are entirely philanthropy, and it is a tough environment. There are so many good causes out there, and so you're constantly trying to look for new sources of funding. I think that's the biggest issue.
Definitely. And kind of expanding upon funding, at the nonprofits you've worked at, what are some examples of fundraising strategies or ways that you guys have received grants or money?
Great question. When I was teaching at for 13 years, I've been teaching at Arizona State University, and I teach fundraising and resource development in the master's program for nonprofit leadership. And what the students do is they each select a different nonprofit sector and then also study 3 different organizations in that sector. Because let's take healthcare as an example. Almost all the healthcare funding comes from insurance companies or comes from the federal government in terms of Medicare, Medicaid. So that's where most of their money's coming from. But how you fundraise around where there are gaps, very different than, say, if you're doing for homelessness. And homelessness, how much of that is coming from government funding? If you are an arts organization, the average arts organization in this country gets about 80% of their money from, at least in Arizona, they get about 80% of their money from earned income, from memberships and from ticket sales. But if you are dealing with animals, there really isn't much in the way of earned revenue. It may be everything that you're getting, you're having to get from donations. If you're working with developmentally disabled, a lot of times there are government contracts. So some things it's fee for service, some things it is government grants, some organizations it's a lot of corporate funding, some it's entirely philanthropy. So it really varies. Nationally, about thinking about, of course, I mentioned earned revenue like ticket sales or what they get from insurance companies. That would be earned revenue. When we look at unearned revenue, philanthropic revenue, nationally, over 80% of that comes from individuals. Less than 5% comes from corporations, which I think surprises people because most people think that businesses are doing most. Actually, businesses are around 4%. Most of it comes from individual giving.
Great. Thank you for expanding more upon that. And my next question is targeted towards how the environment of working at a nonprofit. So how many people usually work at a nonprofit?
The average nonprofit is actually very small. There's a whole lot of 501c3s. So the average nonprofit probably has less than 5 employees, fewer than 5. Because so many of them have 1 person or zero staff. That may be surprising to people because when you think about like even United Ways across the country, United Ways, the average United Way has less than 5 employees, but then there are some that have 200. And Junior Achievements, and I'm at Junior Achievement, and we have 40 employees at ours, but we have 7,000 volunteers. So it varies pretty considerably. There are universities, a lot of universities are nonprofits, and so they have thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. So a lot of variety. I think most of the time when people are thinking of nonprofits, they aren't thinking about hospitals and universities. And so if we pull those really large groups out, more typically you're going to see around 10.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely think nonprofits are like more so volunteer driven. Like there's just a lot of volunteers that come and go, and maybe like few core members that are like, driving the whole thing. But yeah, and so like I know it definitely depends on the size of the volunteers, but usually at nonprofits, do the employees work full or part-time?
Again, depends on the type of organization. I mentioned we have 40 employees at Junior Achievement of Arizona. About 8 of ours are part-time, the rest are full-time. So it varies on what the needs are. So there are some, if you think about like the Boys and Girls Clubs, they might need people who work in the clubs but work after school. So they need part-time employees because they don't need people 8 hours every day. So depending on the type of organization, they will have either more full or part-time. But talking about what it's like to work within nonprofits, as we talked about earlier, the people who work there are very driven by the mission. So you have good people who are really committed and working together. So they tend to be pretty positive places to work.
That's really great to hear, and hopefully encouraging for our viewers who want to consider a career in nonprofits. And I'm actually the leader of a nonprofit myself called Feeding Creativity, where our mission is to cultivate creativity in young minds to drive innovation in all career fields. And our biggest challenge right now is reaching a greater audience with our mission and impacting like the most people we can. So my next question for you is, what strategies do nonprofits have in terms of, getting their name out there and impacting as much people as they can, especially when they are just getting started?
Oh, that is a real challenge. I think for any organization, for profit or not profit, it is harder and harder and harder to break through the noise to have people know what you're doing. I mean, you think about communication and marketing, how difficult that is. I think the best way is, I'm going to say word of mouth, but it is having passionate ambassadors. You, your family, your coworkers. What are people putting on social media? Networking, getting the word out. You could spend a whole lot of money and have a billboard, but most of the people, you wouldn't be reaching the right people. Most people aren't going to care. Who is the audience you want to reach? It's not the general public, because are they really interested in your cause? And some good ways to do that are partnering with other organizations who are also similar to yours. Are there other organizations you can work with who maybe are in schools or who are working with, like, okay, so if you're working with young people, go to the Boys and Girls Club, go to the Girl Scouts, go to other youth serving organizations, partner with them with your programs, you automatically get a bigger reach. Ask them to maybe in their newsletters highlight how they're partnering with you. Suddenly more people know about it. Board members, make sure they are passionate ambassadors and they are out there talking about you, that you're networking, you're meeting people. I think it's about just, if every employee and every volunteer is sharing your story, that's what matters. Then you're getting the word out to the right people.
And I definitely agree with that. Like from personal experience, our most successful way of marketing is definitely word of mouth and just getting out into the community and just talking about the organization. So yeah, definitely agree with you there. And I know that the nonprofit journey is definitely one with many ups and downs, but of course, at the end of the journey, it's really worth it. The reward is just so fulfilling. And as we're wrapping up this episode, my last question for you is, for those who are passionate about a cause and hope to start their own nonprofit in the future, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned as someone who has experienced, the ups and downs of nonprofits and building a sustainable and impactful organization?
I've talked about how the work is so meaningful, and I think it's keeping that mission forefront in your mind. So when there's a challenge, and there will be challenges, and you get frustrated, you say, but wait, what are we doing? Are we making a difference? And you're making the world a better place. So keeping that mission first and foremost, rallying the people around it. I mean, if there is a challenge with employees, if there's a challenge with volunteers, keep reminding yourself of what it is that you're trying to do, and it really makes it worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. Like waking up every day and having that drive, the passion, and the waking up with a purpose to help others is definitely what fuels like success within one. So, well, this wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much, Katherine, for taking the time to share your wisdom and teach our viewers all about nonprofits. I definitely learned a lot myself, and I know our viewers did as well. So, thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much.
Mhm. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something from this episode of Wisdom from the Business World.